Hi, I'm Lane Leppink, Lakeview resident, here to talk about ice fishing and how Lakeview was turned into the world stage for the World Ice Fishing Championship.
Welcome to the Discover Montcalm Podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Duane Weed.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm Podcast, and we're talking ice fishing today with Lane Leppink from Lakeview. And Lane, thank you for coming in today. Ice fishing, and we're talking today in December of 2025. Happens to be a blistery day outside today. This will be aired sometime in 2026. But, you know, if we're talking ice fishing, this is probably not the best day to be out on the ice, but it is making ice today.
Well, they make ice shanties.
They make ice shanties. So before we get into talking about ice fishing in Lakeview, you grew up in Lakeview.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about Lakeview when you grew up.
You know, it seemed like a simpler town, but in the same token, I think we're keeping it simple, too. It was a fun area to grow up in, but I think Lakeview was and is and always has been community.
I know my mom graduated from Lakeview, and, you know, I remember going to my grandparents, and, you know, we'd go over to Lakeview and, you know, do things. So I had a little touch of Lakeview growing up, which brings us to small town Lakeview on a world stage. Let's talk a little bit about how Lakeview became a world stage in 2024 with the World Ice Fishing Championship. What is the World Ice Fishing Championship?
World Ice Fishing Championship was, I believe, started around 2001.
Okay. So the early 2000s?
Yeah. It's an international organization, actually housed in Rome, Italy, that prescribes the different rules of sports fishing. And ice fishing just happens to be one of those schools of thought, no pun intended, with the fish side of things. U.S. Angling is the organization in the United States that is kind of our ambassador to that international stage.
So how did Lakeview get involved?
My understanding is that since about 12, 13 years prior, the United States had not hosted that ice fishing championship. And the coach of the team had been with the team since then when they hosted it in Wisconsin. Myron Gilbert's from Brooklyn, Michigan, and he's always wanted to have the ice fishing tournament, the championship, held in Michigan. He prided himself in Michigan and the lakes that we have to offer. And I guess he wanted to kind of show us off a little bit. And when I talked to him, I said, how did you throw a dart and land on Tamarack Lake in Lakeview, Michigan with a tournament? Mm-hmm. And he said he knew that he wanted to go on the west side of the state. He preferred the west side of the state. Grand Rapids was going to be the kind of home base for the housing of the tournament players and the staff. And then they would branch out. So Lakeview kind of was the perfect proximity from Grand Rapids for these folks to come and go to and from the tournament site.
And I understand that Tamarack Lake has a pretty wide variety of fish. And that was one of the things that I think you told me in conversation before, that was another thing that kind of brought them to that lake.
They like the fact that our lake is not overly populated, overly developed. If you look around the border of the lake, we do have a lot of houses and some cottages, but there's an awful lot of natural border to the lake, too. Mm-hmm. The fish itself, a lot of perch, a lot of bluegill, smaller fish, panfish, some bass, some pike. I personally don't fish it enough to say that I'm an expert at what fish are in there.
Okay.
In fact, I haven't ice fished since I was a kid, and my dad took us out on the lake, sat us on the 5-gallon pail, and said, "Watch that tip up." And so, yeah, the sport itself, you would think, is how do you do a competitive ice fishing tournament?
Okay.
It's kind of like saying, let's go push a rock up a hill and see who can do it the fastest. It would sound or a worm wrestle. It sounds like it could be a very boring sport, but there's a lot of dynamics to it that I've discovered.
So when the event was first presented to Lakeview, what was the community's reaction?
We weren't, being a member of the village council, Myron approached the village manager first, and then he announced it to us at council. And it was pretty, initially thinking that here's this guy coming up from Brooklyn, from southern Michigan, announcing that he's going to have a big tournament. For all we knew, that it was going to be 10, 12 guys with a case of beer each sitting on the ice and sticking a U.S. flag in the ice and saying, this is the official U.S. tournament. And until I got back home and I started Googling it, searching for Myron's name, immediately it came up that this prior year he had been in Mongolia fishing with the U.S. team. Prior to that, it had been Poland or Ukraine or Belarus.
So it was pretty big.
He was the real deal.
Okay.
I mean, this was like the U.S. Olympic Committee contacting Lakeview saying, we're coming up, but they don't have fishing in the Olympics yet.
So the event, it came back to the village, and you guys all got together, and the council got together and said, this is the real deal. Once it was presented, how long from the time that it was presented to the time that the event happened, how much time did it take to put that event together?
We were probably told the prior summer.
So about a year, maybe?
No, about 6, 7 months, 8 months.
Okay, plenty of time.
Yeah, enough time to know that it was happening. I guess I took it upon myself to look at U.S. Angling's website, and as they developed that tournament and the itinerary for the tournament, it was obvious that they had literally every minute scheduled for these fishermen, every minute of every day. And they kind of had to. They were responsible for over 100 fishermen to come to and from Grand Rapids every day to come up and fish the lake and then go back to Grand Rapids every day.
Well, this event, it wasn't their first rodeo, so to speak. So this event had already been happening in other places. So they come in. But this event doesn't put itself together. It took a team. So you guys had to come up with volunteers to put this?
They requested volunteers, local volunteers, because they obviously couldn't just truck them up from Grand Rapids or import them.
Right.
So they asked for a team of volunteers. The tournament itself was set up in 5 different fishing zones, about a half an acre each. Each member of each team, there were 10 countries represented that day or that week. And it was a 2-day tournament, the Saturday and Sunday of that week. And each team had a representative, had a fisherman in each zone. So there were 50 fishermen out on the ice at any given time during that tournament. So each country had 5 fishermen out there. They needed runners, basically, volunteer local runners, to be able to run out into those zones and swap out the buckets of the fish they were catching with clean buckets with water in it. It was an interesting process to learn and understand why. The Michigan DNR has a mandate, a rule that says you can't catch more than 25 fish in a day on the ice. And because of that rule, they requested kind of a variance to run this tournament. They were going to be fishing for 3 hours each day on Saturday and Sunday. And what they wanted to do is get an aggregate weight of the amount of fish that each fisherman going to catch.
Because that's what the tournament is it's based on the weight.
It's the weight of the total amount of fish.
Is it a catch and release then?
They enacted a catch and release rule.
Oh, okay.
And the DNR approved it, that we would go in periodically so that they wouldn't catch more than 25 fish in that bucket.
Okay.
We'd bring the bucket, retrieve it back into a weigh station. They'd weigh the fish for each individual ice fisherman and keep a running tally as to who was in first, who was in second, and so forth.
Okay. And this happened over, what did you say, a
2 days.
A 2-day period? Once it got going, it was probably quite a spectacle to watch and probably to be part, to see. How did the community take to this?
The community went absolutely crazy over it. I mean, we had to. We were invited to the world stage, and we only had one opportunity to kind of embrace the world, and they did embrace us. I thought it was really, really cool. Had an opportunity. The one thing that we, in communicating with U.S. Angling and checking out their itinerary, it was frustrating because there was really no time to get to know the teams, the players. A couple of the teams stayed locally. The Lithuanian team stayed at a local Airbnb, but the rest of them trucked down to Grand Rapids every day. And so I made it a point to talk to some of the leaders of the tournament, communicated back and forth with them, and said it would be nice if there was a time blocked off where those team members could communicate and kind of hang out with the locals. Is there something we could do in that regard? I'll be honest, I guess I was kind of a pest about it to the guy who was in charge of it, because he finally looked at the itinerary and kind of caved in and said, in other tournaments, especially in Europe and Asia, they had just left Mongolia, and there is no town around that lake. There is nothing. It's in no man's land. So to expect the locals to come out and see the fishermen was just not a chance. We are right on the lake.
Right.
So that was an opportune time to say, can we just get a chance to meet these guys and ladies? There were a few ladies on different teams. So they gave us a 2-hour block on the Friday before the tournament started. And that's when we really started ramping up, planning that 2-hour. I mean, you got 120 minutes. You better make it worth it.
Sure. And I bet you the fishermen, that was probably cool for them too.
DW Video transfers your home movies, slides, audio, and videotapes to digital. They produce and design websites, create business and social media videos, TV commercials, and family storytelling videos. Celebrating 40 years in business, visit dwvideo.com to learn more.
Different, but they said that they've never had a community come out like that. We sent each team down the main street. That was kind of the most memorable thing, was sending each team down Main Street carrying their country flag.
Oh, cool.
So it was exactly like an Olympic setting, having their national anthem played as they got closer to downtown. And the street was just filled on both sides with people taking pictures of the teams. The most awesome part of it was that the teams were pulling out their cameras, taking pictures of people taking pictures of them, because they couldn't believe that this was going on. They were feeling pretty surreal about it too. So we had planned with absolutely no practice, no preparation, what I consider a pretty cool parade, a parade of teams and then at the end of the parade, Community First Federal Credit Union sponsored a meet and greet at the end of the parade.
Okay.
So the whole community, it was like a big party. We shut down Main Street and said, we're going to get to know these guys. Mm-hmm. And that's what ended up happening. It was the start and the springboard to starting a pretty cool relationship with the organization too. When it was all done, the organization, I stayed in touch with them. There again, why not be a little bit of a pest? Persistence can pay once in a while.
So, speaking of persistence, something has come from this.
Yeah.
Something has come from this. So you've kind of opened that door. Tell us what the future is looking like from this one event that was probably going to be a one and done is now turning into what?
What you learn about it, I didn't realize just by tippy-toeing into this. Someone would come up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're the organizer of this whole thing." And I said, "I don't organize anything. I just happen to be the go-between, talking with the organization, talking with the tournament leaders." Mm-hmm. They put on their tournament. They come to town, they put on their tournament. It's not us doing the tournament. Since then, that relationship between U.S. Angling and Lakeview kept growing, kept being nurtured, and when the final word kind of came out, it was kind of interesting because the gentleman from the president of the team got a hold of me, Joe. He's from Utah, and he basically emailed me one final time after I was group emailing everybody and said to me, "Hey, just to let you know, I am kind of the one in charge of the team. You can focus your emails directly to me," because I kind of think the other guys were going, "Hey, this guy in Lakeview is being a little bit of a nuisance." He assured me that that's not the case. He assured me that, honestly, everyone was so in love with the town. We're going to come. We want to keep coming back.
Okay.
But because the international situation, the international tournament, like you say, was a one and done deal, one opportunity, a shooting star. But every year they have a national qualifying tournament. The U.S. team does, mm-hmm. And they said they would like to make Lakeview their home lake, Tamarack Lake, so that all of the national tournaments get done there in Lakeview every year from here on out.
Well, hey, one opportunity turns into a yearly opportunity for a small community in Michigan, in Montcalm County. Welcome to Lakeview.
It's an awesome opportunity. In talking, they have qualifying events in Montana, Minnesota. There's another one somewhere down by Grand Rapids. He hasn't announced where the lake is yet. You can go and you have to pay the qualifying tournament fee, but try out for the team per se. And in talking with the U.S. ice fishing team, Joe made sure to tell me, he says, we're also going to allow we're going to allow 5 walk-ons from the Lakeview community.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of what's important for this shout out, is to understand if you're local and in the Lakeview School District, give the Lakeview Village offices a phone call and just say, "Hey, I'd like to be put on that team, on that walk-on team." What you're doing, though, is you're obligating yourself to a pretty busy week in February, this coming February. More so, you're obligating yourself to a possibility of going international in 2027.
So you need to have a passport.
Yeah, you got to be able to travel internationally.
You got to have some funding. But that opportunity all came because you used the word that you were a pest.
You could say I was a pest. But
you know what? It was the opportunity that you had set up, because I think you have a pride for your community. And you saw an opportunity and you took a leadership role because it was there. And that's pretty cool. And now, at least for this year, coming up in 2026, the Nationals are going to be here. Hopefully it'll be a yearly thing after this. I know you got to start with one, and then it keeps going from there. And we'll hopefully that continues. And Lane, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. I hope that this is a continuing item that keeps happening. And anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to leave us with?
The Discover Montcalm podcast is brought to you by WGLM 106.3 FM, Business Growth Engine, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, and DW Video.
Well, this year's event, I think, is going to be more community-oriented than last year's event. Last year's event was 2 hours, and the afterglow was amazing. I mean, everybody looks back at that and says that was the most amazing 2 hours to be able to hang out with 10 different countries. It just, and the appreciation that everybody had for that event and all of the volunteers. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you who all volunteered, because I don't even want to start. Mm-hmm. Because once I start, I'm going to forget somebody and someone's going to be hurt. This year, I truly think it's going to be bigger than last year, because the opportunities is to make it more of a local festival on that Saturday. It's February 28th, the last week in February. We are going to be having the U.S. ice fishing team during the tournament days has dedicated that Saturday to be a community day. It's going to be like an ice fishing festival.
So that's February 28th of 2026.
Of 2026, yep.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Discover Montcalm Podcast. You can follow us on discovermontcalmpodcast.com, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, on Pandora, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart. If you would like to be a guest, reach out to me at 231-250-9624. Remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is produced by content creator Duane Weed, celebrating 40 years at DW Video and Multimedia LLC at dwvideo.com, or call 231-250-9624